So hello and welcome to the video. I've made a few videos now about air travel and they always seem to be very well received. So I thought I'd pull together a video on the subject of airline tickets. This video should answer some questions I've been asked in the comments of earlier videos. It will also cover some requests I've had for specific videos, and it should also contain some interesting tidbits I've picked up over the years but have not had the opportunity to talk about previously. Lists of 6 seem to be my thing, and it is good YouTubing to set expectations so that the viewer knows to stick around to see what the 6th thing is. So here are 6 secrets of your airline ticket that you need to know about. Plus, I'll show you how you can take advantage of knowing about each of these secrets to get a better deal when you next buy a ticket. So if that sounds good, and why wouldn't it, then stick around. Hi, I'm Matt. Over the last 25 years, I've travelled a lot. I've lived in 5 countries on 4 continents. I've flown over 1.3 million miles. I've visited over 100 countries, every American state, but I'm nowhere near done. So subscribe, and perhaps you'll pick up some hacks, hints and tips to make your next trip better. So a relatively simple one to start with, Codeshares. It is entirely possible to buy a ticket on what you believed to be airline A, only to turn up at the airport and discover that you're actually flying on airline B, which can be very annoying. Although this happens across many airlines, I'm particularly thinking of Vueling here. Vueling is a low-cost Spanish carrier that is a sister company of British Airways in the International Airlines group. And as a sister company, BA does offer codeshare flights on Vueling to locations in Spain and also across other parts of Europe. Or at least it did. I went fishing to find examples for this video and I actually couldn't find any. The booking website will tell you that you are booking a codeshare flight, although it is very easy to miss, particularly if you're not alert to that particular nuance when you're booking. Apart from being a potentially very different in-flight experience, there are going to be other consequences. For example, if you had silver status with BA and booked on a Vueling flight, you won't get lounge access. A gold status member will get lounge access, but only for themselves and not for a guest. Similar oddities exist when booking onto Aer Lingus or Air Baltic flights, but they're all slightly different and this all gets very complicated very quickly. So the point here is to be alert to the possibility of codeshares and do a bit of Googling to see the consequences if you end up on one. Not all consequences, though, are bad. Before British Airways introduced its Club Suites product, travelling BA only on an American Airlines plane was arguably a better in-flight experience. And as Qantas is in the One World Alliance but has a separate codeshare agreement with Emirates, it is possible to fly from London to Dubai on Emirates and earn tier points and avios into the British Airways scheme by flying under a Qantas flight number. That's a pretty good trick to know about. Right, second on the list are fare codes. You may have heard them described as fare buckets. Most people will take most flights without a clue what fare code they are flying under, and for most people that's fine. But in some circumstances it can make a difference. Flights are made available a certain number of days before the actual date of travel. For British Airways, this is 355. That's their magic number. This is a number that's worth remembering, and if your preferred airline is different, it's worth a quick Google to see what their magic number is. The moment a flight is created, availability will be at its very best, both for revenue and redemption tickets. So if your travel plans are known a year or more in advance, make a calendar note to make your booking on the day the flight is released, because availability and fares are both likely to be at their very best on that date. Those flights are created with a number of fare codes, and those fare codes will each have a number of fare bases. This is an example of a BA flight from London to Istanbul, details of which I found on expertflyer.com. This is a subscription-based service that will tell you lots and lots and lots and lots of great information about airline fares. It costs about £10 a month to see this level of detail, but you can get a 5-day free trial. That London to Istanbul flight has 103 different fares. That's 62 in economy and 41 in business. They ranged from £40 for the cheapest economy fare to £963 for the full fare business class ticket. Airlines then manage their revenues by closing out the lowest fare buckets progressively as the flight fills up. So why does that matter? Well, for most people, it doesn't. But there are 3 ways in which it can be significant. First, within a specific class of travel, different fare codes can generate different avios and tier point earning rates. So if you're on a threshold, spending a few more quids to get a higher fare code may actually pay off. Secondly, only some fare codes can be upgraded. So if you plan to use air miles to upgrade a ticket, you need to make sure you buy the right fare code to start out with. This is a more significant problem on some airlines than others, but it is something to be aware of. The third and most interesting significance arises when you want to buy more tickets than are available in the cheapest fare code. The booking systems used by airlines are actually quite dumb. So instead of doing what you'd expect, which is to offer you X tickets in the lowest fare code, exhausting that, and then offering you the remaining Y tickets from the higher fare code, instead they will price up the entire booking from that higher fare code. So 3 tickets in this example on BA to Barbados would cost £1,499 each. But if you increase your request to 4 tickets, they price up at £2,116 each, as only 3 were available in that lowest fare bucket. This heavily favours the airlines and is probably the reason why they've never been inspired to invest the money to upgrade their systems to fix this. So if you are buying multiple tickets, price them up one by one, and if necessary, buy them in multiple tranches to make sure you get the best overall price. Matrix ITA will actually show this price step in its results. So it might be worth pricing up your flight over there first to see if this fare bucket jump might affect you. I reckon that's a pretty good tip, certainly worth a click of the like button for this video, surely. And it's also worth it, I'd say, if you weren't actually called Shirley. And while you're at it, please also subscribe to the channel. That would really help me out. And leave me a comment if you're enjoying this and if this is the sort of content you'd like to see more of. So you might think that that fare that we've been looking at is the price you're going to pay. Well, I'm sorry to say it's not. Which brings me on to item 3 on my list, taxes. Airports and the country those airports are in will add taxes to your ticket to cover the costs of travelling through that location. These are part of the price you pay, but by understanding how they're determined, you may be able to save a few quid. The best price to find them is ITA Matrix. Now, I've talked about this software at length in this video, so if this has piqued your interest, by all means go and check that video out. So to illustrate, I've priced up a flight from London to Charles de Gaulle Airport, and by clicking on this button, Matrix will show you the components of that quoted fare. So this ticket prices into a Q fare code and only costs £26.50 each way. Then there are 2 UK costs added. The first is air passenger duty, which is a tax on travel. The second is a passenger service charge, which theoretically covers the costs of travelling through Heathrow Airport. France then adds 4 charges, as you can see here. All of France's taxes relate to the direct costs of travel, in theory at least. Charles de Gaulle Airport is therefore a more expensive airport to transit than Heathrow, and the UK is one of only a handful of countries that has a direct travel tax. So in this instance, 47% of your ticket price is going to British Airways, 28% is going to the UK government, and 25% is going to the French government. So how do you take advantage of this information? Well, with air passenger duty, there's not that much you can do. Well, within the UK, about the only tip I can give you is to start an itinerary from Inverness, as it's part of the Scottish Highlands and Islands and so has been exempted from air passenger duty. If you're travelling outside of Europe, you may save some money by flying first to somewhere in Europe and therefore pay the lower air passenger duty to get out of the UK, and then fly on to your final destination from that European location. This can be known as an ex-EU. I talk about them in these videos, so check those out if that sounds interesting. When it comes to taxes, keeping them down is a little bit simpler. Just travel through cheap airports. I found this table when researching this, and although I haven't validated every one of these numbers, it does seem to indicate quite clearly that, as you might expect, London Heathrow is the most expensive airport to transit when travelling across the Atlantic. Without talking for hours about this, the bottom line is that if Ryanair flies somewhere, you can be pretty certain that that is going to be the cheapest airport to use in that particular area. So item 4 on the list is another thing that gets added to your ticket. It's surcharges. Many years ago, the price of jet fuel suddenly shot up and airlines found themselves in a bit of a pickle. It would have been really difficult for them to recalculate and republish the hundreds of thousands or perhaps even millions of different fare codes associated with all of the flights that they offered. So instead, they lumped a surcharge on top of all of the fares they offered to cover this increased cost of fuel. And the easiest way to collect that surcharge was to use the same mechanism as the government uses to collect its taxes. But when fuel prices started to fall back again, the surcharges didn't. Airlines quite liked extracting more money from their customers, and by disguising it as a tax, the customers often didn't realise that that was what was happening. They could lower their quoted fares and look good in the eyes of the public whilst actually increasing their revenues. As, quite quickly, these surcharges ceased to have any correlation at all to the price of jet fuel, they have been renamed as carrier-imposed surcharges. But they are still a huge earner for the airlines. So take a look at this flight from London to Los Angeles. British Airways quotes a fare of £21.50 each way, which is ridiculously low. It's actually only slightly more expensive than that flight we looked at earlier from London to Istanbul. But that's only 10% of the price you end up paying. You pay 9% to use Heathrow, you pay 11% to use LAX Airport, you also pay 19% as the UK's air passenger duty, and the balancing 49% of the cost of the ticket is BA's surcharge. That £21.50 fare doesn't look so good now, does it? But it gets worse. If you look at a Los Angeles to London return trip on the same dates, the price is considerably higher. But the UK and US taxes are identical, which is what you would expect. You're using the same airports, albeit in a different order. BA's fare is considerably higher that way round, although that is likely to be a function of supply and demand. But their surcharge is 45% higher at £290. You're taking the exact same flights, although in a different order. And you might come to the conclusion that that's outrageous. Another example. Let's look at London to Hong Kong, and I've picked Hong Kong as it is on a very short list of places where these surcharges are illegal. There's a very respectable base fare of £41 each way, plus UK fees of £131 and twopence, which is actually identical to what you'd pay to travel to LA, because from the government's perspective you're transiting Heathrow in exactly the same way regardless of your destination. Hong Kong then imposes only £31 in taxes, and the BA surcharge is £189. That's 10% lower than the surcharge to Los Angeles for a flight that is 10% longer. Yet more evidence that these surcharges are effectively arbitrary. So let's take a look at that fare in reverse, where BA is not legally allowed to include surcharges in its ticketing. The taxes are the same, and sure enough there is no surcharge. Instead, the fare jumps to £143 each way, which is a £204 increase in total. So why should you care? But where it does help is with redemptions. With BA, as with many other airlines, you can trade in your air miles for free flights. But you are usually only getting the base fare for free. Taxes and charges usually still have to be paid. So airlines still make you pay their surcharges when you are redeeming air miles for free flights, which is a bit sneaky. So take a look at buying 2 one-way redemptions rather than returns. With many schemes, there are good reasons for doing this anyway, but with this BA example, you'll pay half the surcharge on a one-way flight to Hong Kong. But you'll avoid it on the return. You'll avoid it because BA has to lump the surcharge in with the base fare, which it is then giving you for free in exchange for your avios. Doing this will cost you exactly the same number of avios, but it will save you £94 per passenger. Similar opportunities exist if you need to fly from the US to the UK, and there are others out there. So next time you are planning a redemption, take a look and see if it is smarter to book it as 2 one-ways rather than as a return. Number 5 on the list is points of sale. Ticket pricing is a function of supply and demand, and international supply and demand factors can be significant. So airlines will offer the same seat on the same airline for a different price depending on where you buy it. And they control this by having different points of sale around the world. An example, let's say you wanted to fly from Cartagena to Bogota in Colombia and you're in the UK. The airlines believe that you will be happier to pay a higher fare as a rich foreigner than they think it is fair to charge their local customers. So the price in London is higher than the price in Colombia. And that's true for both of the airlines that service that route. You can see these prices very easily in, you guessed it, ITA Matrix. The selection page allows you to select a sales city, which is Matrix's proxy for showing you the different points of sale. Playing around with the sales city can spit out a much cheaper fare. Buying a ticket you might find in an overseas point of sale can be a bit tricky though. And this is where having a virtual private network can pay off. These move your computer's internet presence completely legally to a different geographical location, and by doing so you can circumvent any geographical restrictions a particular website may have when it comes to selling tickets. I recommend Surfshark, and there's a link in the description below through which you'll be able to save 81% on a subscription. Using this trick just once can fund an entire year's Surfshark subscription. And you'll get the extra benefit of having additional protection on your devices when you are travelling internationally. And finally, as we're talking about supply and demand, a trick that takes advantage of the quirks of airline pricing. The airlines hate this more than anything else. It's an area where you are knowingly deviating from the terms and conditions you accept when buying a ticket, and could have serious consequences on your relationship with the airline if you were to do it regularly. I've never done it, but knowledge is king, so even if you never use it, it is a very interesting knowledge bomb about how airlines price their tickets. So number 6 on my list is hidden city ticketing. Point-to-point flights are the most convenient, so they can command the highest prices. So take this example, a direct flight from Los Angeles to Atlanta on Delta, which is $319 one way. But if you take a look at the cost of flying to cities beyond Atlanta, which require you to connect in Atlanta, such as Savannah in Georgia, you can sometimes find a lower fare even though you are taking one more flight. And as you can see, it's the exact same flight from LA to Atlanta on the exact same fare code. So here, Atlanta is the hidden city, and what you do is you buy the cheaper ticket and just leave the airport in Atlanta. Okay, so this is only a $10 saving, but it is a proof of concept, and it took me quite a while to find this one. Demand is still suppressed and flights are still cheap, so the opportunities that currently exist to do this are quite limited. When things pick back up, this is likely to return to being something that is relatively common to find. And it works in the US as well as Europe. Remember though, if you drop a leg, all future flights are cancelled, so this either has to be the last leg of an itinerary or you need to buy 2 one-way tickets. But if you buy 2 one-way tickets, you then get the opportunity to find a hidden city on your outbound and your return. And remember, airlines hate this, so if you do it, don't do it every week. And finally, and I actually mean it this time, I'm going to add a bonus point, still on the subject of leveraging supply and demand, but completely in accordance with airline terms and conditions this time. I call it bonus city ticketing. The best way to describe this is via an example. I had to be in Dallas on a Friday, and flights back home to San Diego on the Friday evening were extortionate because they were in very high demand. I worked out that instead of heading home west, if instead on that Friday night I flew on to Cancun, I could then fly from Cancun to Dallas to San Diego on the Sunday night and save my company hundreds of dollars. So my personal sacrifice of having to spend a weekend in Cancun paid off handsomely for my company. So if you're looking at a flight that seems ridiculously expensive because you are being forced to take it at a peak time, have a look and see whether a bonus city itinerary could work for you. So thanks for watching. I have a feeling when I edit all of this together that this will end up being my longest video. I could have split it into 2, I did think of doing so, but let's lump it all together and see what happens. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe. I appreciate all 3. And I'll see you all again in the next one. Goodbye.